Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Batwoman. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we're not done with this freeze situation, as we have a guy testing it out where he's trying to freeze an unfreezing process, which goes full-blown Sub-Zero in this situation with a guy, well, the person that's frozen at the beginning, they try to unfreeze him, ends up shattering to pieces. I was like, that's heartbreaking, but it's like, for what purpose? I mean, well, it's an interesting element that I feel like this is the first, well, it was an element last season where Ryan had to balance being Batwoman with the whole, like, probation situation that she was in. This time, she plays, because I'm trying to remember. I don't think we got too many instances of... Well, she had to play the role sometimes. Kate kind of had to play that role a little bit of, like, the, stings with Wayne Enterprises and Batwoman. Well, Ryan kind of steps up into that plate because as the CEO of, it's like, right, Marcus hooked her up with, putting her on a 30 under 30. We meet Charlie, which, if I'm not mistaken, that character recently popped up in Titans, because it was some dude that was helping Bruce get his affairs in order, and I was like, I think that character's name was Charlie. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like, I guess he's just one of those, like, oh, he's part of the Wayne Enterprises, like, inner circle of, like, he doesn't, in this case, he doesn't know about the Bat stuff. Maybe in Titans he did. I'm not sure. But he's kind of like the outside, like, he's like Lucius. He's part of a somewhat inner circle, but he's someone that, like, Bruce relied on from the outside. And so Charlie is here to help, like, lead Ryan through all the conversations and the know-hows and the shakes and the PR representation as a CEO. Obviously, her brother's, like, happy about it because he's just like, oh, using this as an excuse to spend more time with her. But she's keeping him at a distance because it's like, right, our mom made it pretty clear. I need to stay away from her family situation. But the moment she finds out about it, she puts Ryan on blast. She looked into, somehow she got access to Wayne Enterprises, like, financials. And it turns out that, like, there's millions that have kind of gone missing. And it's like, Ryan's like, where's that? Did Jada fake that? And Luke's like, no, it's legit. And it's like, that money that she's saying is like, oh, like, was embezzled is what's used to run the Bat operation, which I was like, that's fascinating. Because I think I've talked about this before in different reviews, but, like, that's always been a conversation about, like, how did Team Arrow and Team Flash fund their operations and kept their respective bases going and keep up, these operations are pretty, cost a lot. I mean, at least with, like, Supergirl, they had government funding because it was the DEO. I don't know if they really ever talk well, I guess John runs everything now, so, like, he was able to kind of build everything up from the ground, so it's like, I guess it's like they kind of run and operate things on their own. Plus, they got some people with some connections and stuff like that. Lena's part of the team, but it's just interesting to know, like, yeah, I don't know if that's ever really come up. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, Bruce is a billionaire, so, like, of course, like, Kate and, like, Ryan would never really have full access to that, but it's like that money is used through Wayne Enterprises. Like, some money was set aside for the Bat operations. I mean, at least with, like, I guess, like, you can make arguments later on Oliver becoming mayor, but that's only some, like, revenue. But then, like, Star Labs did open up to become, like, a full-blown museum at certain points in time, but even before then, like, how'd you pay for the whole operation? Yada, yada, yada. But it's just interesting knowing that. But it's, like, sad because that kind of gets used against him. Which I feel so bad because, like, later on, Charlie, it's like, right, there's 30 million that went missing. But it's like, right, that was all before Ryan took over. So it's like, it's all going to fall back on Bruce. It's like, yeah, because of his misdeeds and his behavior and the disappearances. And you see Luke and Ryan kind of look down because it's like, right, they know what he was up to. He was off being Batman. So it's not like that. But it's like, because he had his debaucherous persona, just because it's like, oh, Bruce Wayne, like, it's easy to kind of throw all the shade his way, which is so sad, just because it's like, right, they know what he was really up to. And so Ryan's in this complicated situation. Like, obviously she's dealing with all this other stuff during the episode, but Jada, like I said, ran her name through the mud. And it's like, if she wants to keep, if Wayne Enterprises wants to stay around, she needs to back away as CEO. But obviously for Lucius, it's like, yeah, like, not Lucius. Well, yes, Lucius, like, for Luke, but for Luke, this company is like the last piece of his dad he has, because Bruce was like the face of the company, but it was like, you know, his dad was kind of like the backbone of it. So it's like, if this company goes away, he'd be like losing the last piece and last connection he had to his dad. But also for Ryan, it's like, but she's not going to give up this without a fight neither, because stepping away from this would also mean giving up access to like that money that bankrolls the Bat operation. So it's like, she's not going down without a fight, you know, because Luke is like, I warned you that your mom, and despite being your mom, would still come after you. But that is the thing of like, why come after me this hard? Like, just because I was around my brother? That doesn't make any sense. And it's like, I guess because Marcus is, I don't know. She definitely has her own thing going on, but I still believe like Marcus isn't someone that should be trusted, because it seems like, because at the center of this, Sophie's sister Jordan ended up discovering like a secret society called the Black Glove Society, which I'm like, man, how many secret societies does Gotham have? I wonder, is the Black Glove Society something that's like a super deep cut in the comics? They also made another reference where like Alice was like, oh yeah, like these specific boots from something Icarus, and then like you had Mary go like, oh, that's a deep cut, and it's like, no, that's something I made up. I was like, is that supposed to be an inside joke? Because is that actually a deep cut that she referenced, but it's a thing in the comics, but it's not a thing in this continuity? I wonder if that's what that is. I'll look into it later, but it makes me wonder, is that what the Black Glove Society is? Because it's like, I mean, the only secret society I'm aware of, because I think, well, they've gotten a lot more play recently. I mean, probably a lot more in the comics, but also like live action wise, Gotham, the Gotham Knights video game is going to circle around them being the main antagonist, and that's the Court of Owls situation. So I was wondering, like, if they're supposed to be kind of a replacement for them in this continuity, or are they just another secret society that exists? Because maybe the Court of Owls has already been dealt with in this continuity, so now this is... But it's basically a rich and powerful, which the Court of Society kind of works... at the Court of Society, the Court of Owls works the same way, just like the rich and powerful families of Gotham. So it seems like it's kind of a similar thing. But... the main guy behind all of this is doing that. He's experimenting on the people that, not only Jordan, but the other people as well. Because Jordan and her friends, the people she was working with, were going to expose the blood. Because she was saying, like, right, she was going to use this opportunity to get, like, a lot of powerful people to give money to, like, the community center. But the budget, quadruple the budget of the community center. But in actuality, it was to expose this secret society. But they ended up striking first. So sadly, we saw one of them die early in this episode. Another one dies off screen. But when Ryan gets in there, it's like a bloody mess. Like, it's just like, once again, very Sub-Zero-esque fatality type of situation. But Jordan's the only one left. But it's like, they have to regulate her temperature, because if she gets to, because you can't thaw her by normal means, because that doesn't work. That just leads to them dying. But, because obviously, like, Mary and Luke aren't on the same page this episode. Like, he's very, like, dismissive of her. Even Ryan's like, right, I gotta walk and talk. So, like, right, Mary's like, I had some weird experience, and, but, you know, I'll like, shelve it right now while everyone's dealing with their own thing. But, Luke's kind of, like, he's like, I'm not dunking on you, but it's just like, right, like, you signed, you're all about being Batwoman, team doctors, everything, so you haven't found out a means of dealing with things. But, with the Jordan situation, it turned out, apparently plants have like an antifreeze element or something to them. It's about circulating it from the inside, like it's from the inside out, rather than trying to thaw from the outside. You have to thaw from the inside. So luckily, using that, they were able to save Jordan at the end. But obviously, this all pushed Sophie, because like, for her, it's like her sister was up to something the entire time. She had no idea. Plus, it's like, right, this is my sister, this is my responsibility, and she felt like she was failing as a sister. At the same time, Alice is dealing with her own circumstances of her continuing to lose her mind. She thought at first, it's like, oh, it's just going to be at Arkham, but even being out in the field, it started affecting her. When they were searching Jordan's place, it's just like, oh no, I'm just in my process, I'm talking about things out loud, let me do my thing, go. But then later on, when they get captured, I love that Sophie calls her out. It's like, this is actually entirely your fault. It's like, you're the legit supervillain, and you got caught off guard because you were too busy talking to someone that's not even here. And Alice's almost like, Ike. And she's like, yes, I know. I heard out. I know. I figured out that's what was going on here. So it's pretty impressive, like, the setup of, like, the gasoline on the books trailing over them. Luckily, Ryan shows up in time, which honestly is just like, I just like stuff like that, like a frozen flame like that looks so badass frozen. But yeah, luckily Ryan saved the day, but it does spark a little bit of that, Ryan and Sophie thing, because Sophie was staring at Ryan, and it's like she had a dream about it. It's like, yeah, I was sick, and she was like offering me soup. I didn't even get to taste it. It's like, was there a flower? Yeah, because it's about, like, the dream is supposed to be representative of longing, but she was like, yeah, but it wasn't even a sex dream or whatever. She's like, first off, it's just like, it's just like part of her screaming like, oh, I need to, like, find a girlfriend. But she's like, it doesn't have to be Ryan. But it's like, yeah, they're clicking there, They've been on a nice wavelength. It's like, yeah, both of their relationships didn't pan out, so it's like, and they, spend enough time working with someone, some feelings are bound to develop. I mean, we've seen it time and time again with our different respective groups. Whether it be Team Arrow, Team Flash, but that's kind of a different circumstance considering, like, well, Barry and Iris, Barry's, like, he's always been in love with Iris since they were kids. And then Jeff and Lynn were obviously, already married. Granted, they got divorced, but still. And then, like, Ava and Sarah, for example, or Nate and Amaya, or Nate and Zari. But, and even potentially, like, Virad and Astra, maybe. But regardless, tangents and all that aside, you get the point I was trying to make. But she's kind of in, like, denial mode. She's not like, no. But it's like, I guess she's kind of afraid to take that step forward, especially how everything how everything played out with Kate. Granted, it was different circumstances. There were other contributing factors to that, but it's also like, is that complicated thing of being in love with a superhero of, like, but you are working together as a team, so it's not like it's a secret identity thing anymore. You know who Ryan is, especially considering their complicated past and connections and stuff like that. But, how they actually first came into each other's lives because of, Ryan's, like, criminal record and stuff like that. But intentions and all that aside, the bad guys did end up getting away, and it seems like, at first, based on the file Alice was reading, I thought Jada's company was part of the Black Glove Society, but it seems like they're just, like, getting their help. It seems like it's like, we do stuff for you, but you don't ask too much information about our identities or whatever. And she's like, oh, how did you get it? He's like, oh, we stole someone else's resources on how to figure it out. She's like, well, as long as that's all you did. So it's like, so Jada's ignorant about it because it's like, it's a thing of, well, I didn't know, like, people were getting hurt. It's like, yeah, but you didn't want to know. Like, you could have found out, but you chose not to. You wanted to stay ignorant because you got in bed with some very, very bad people. And it seems the reason why she wants is she wants to use this technology against her son. Now, for what, like, it's just basically she wants him out of the way for a while because she knows what he's doing. He's gunning for her position, and it's like, I guess their family dynamic is all about power, and if you want power, you have to take it. And she knows that he's kind of coming for both the proverbial and literal throne, and she just needs him removed from the equation, out of the picture, so he loses some of that steam, a lot of that backing. Because the reason why he was saying that he was able to find Jordan was because, like, someone who works behind the desk. I'm like, because even Luke was, like, suspicious. It's like, he is rich and powerful, so he could be someone from the Black Glove Society. It's interesting because Alice didn't bring it up. I guess she didn't, like, we noticed it, but she didn't. Or maybe she's holding on to information, or maybe she's still not clear what was something is real and what's not. But she didn't mention that you did see Jada's, like, company's name on and, like, at least one of those, like, reports from the evidence that Jordan had before it got snatched away. So, But there's also the question about what do they do with Alice going forward, because it's like, right, like, we don't know what her circumstances are. The doctors in Arkham aren't really helping her because, well, it's Arkham. I mean, just because there's no Hugo Strange that we're aware of doesn't mean there's not shady stuff going in Arkham, down in Arkham, because once again, Arkham is Arkham and no villain actually gets help. I mean, some villains are actually born there, like Harley tried to help people and ended up becoming the supervillain she became. So, you know, it's a breeding ground for supervillains all around. But tangents and all that aside, well, not really a tangent, but Sophie's going to be stuck on babysitting duty essentially. Because I love it's like, oh, Rai, and refers to Renee as like Renee, but Alice. I was calling Sophie Rumi, so it's like, oh, we're gonna be spending so much time together. You know, it's like, oh, I'm surprised like she doesn't make some joke of like, oh, we're practically family. I mean, great, you know, you and my sister dated for a while, so you're like my sister-in-law to almost an extent. But I think some level that did kind of probably spark some things to like Sophie being the overprotective sister, because it's like, oh, why didn't she tell me? And it's like, why? Because you're Sophie, you know, miss I play it safe type of situation. So like Alice was like sincere in that moment when she was talking from that perspective, because I think it's almost a thing of like, right, the older sister looking out for the little one. It's like, you know, she didn't bring it up, but I'm sure there's some subtle levels of like, right, her own relationship with Kate that kind of paralleled in that moment of like, right, didn't feel like she was protected by her sister, you know? So it's like, maybe there's some element of that kind of was there, whether she said it, maybe it resonated somewhere in her character. But Mary's like, we don't know if the doctors are really treating her, if any of the medication they're giving her there might be making things worse. So that's why Mary's like, right, we'll kind of sign off on like Mary kind of looking after her and medicating her necessarily. So it's like, I'm wondering what, like, is it something medicine wise like that's happening in Arkham, or is there contributing factor? Because that is like, whatever it is, it didn't start till this season. So, and this is the season she spent the most time in Arkham. So I'm curious to find out where all this ends up taking us on that front. But other than that, we also have Ryan deciding to work with her brother, put everything aside of like, right, do you think if we stand together, could we stand against Jada? Because this is the only way she's going to keep her position as CEO while also, you know, keeping her calling as Batwoman. So it's like, she's not going to have Jada, like Jada didn't want her, and it's like, you're not going to steal everything away from me that I've gotten here without you. Like, you're not, but because Jada doesn't know what it's all about. She just wants to know, like, oh, using that money situation against Ryan. And luckily they avoided disaster by being like, yeah, because they had Diggle's help, because they made it seem like, oh, like this was based on some like Argus secret Argus project that Ryan just didn't inform the board of directors about. But then, like, you know, it's like Luke's like, I have a friend at Argus who owes me a favor, so, you know, it's like, yeah. Diggle coming through, always helpful, always coming through in the end when you need him most, especially for Luke, which, speaking of, he's still, you know, he finally gets, by turning this failsafe back on, he gets his father's voice back, because, like, the AI system is connected to the failsafe. So once the failsafe was turned off, of course, like, because he was thinking like, oh, you're giving me the silent treatment, but I turned the failsafe off because I need to be out in the field. But talking to his dad, it's like, a friend told me what was what, but he's like, at the end of the day, like, I just need to hear it from you, because it means, obviously, it's going to hit home a lot more if it comes from his dad. But he's like, I'm not ready to be back in the field, am I? And Lucius is like, no. Despite him giving Mary such a hard time, like, she was right. Like, she wasn't wrong. But that's why he was also pushing back against it so hard, because it was like, right, like, he wasn't ready for the field. It's like, you know, like, oh, like, I'm ready to suit up. Like, this is my thing. Like, I get help. And it's like, you're telling me I'm being benched. But it's like, she was right to. Until the failsafe proved, until he knows that he's fully ready, like, he can't be out in the field, because it could jeopardize Ryan and everything. So, but also, Mary didn't get to touch on her circumstances. The vines like wrapped around her. I wonder what that was about. She woke up in a bench and she was like, what? And, and she found like a piece of plant like inside of herself. So I'm like, is there technically something growing inside of her that she's not aware of? Like why specifically her? I thought she would have had a certain run-in with someone, but it's like, no, whoever it is keeping to the shadows. But like, why? Like, is it someone that knows Mary or something? Like, why would they do that? Like, what are they trying to? I don't know. This whole Jada situation does beg the question that it seems like, once again, this Mr. Freeze stuff was tied to this Black Glove Society. There was the talk about the clients in both regards. So I'm guessing the people they met last episode were people that were working with the Black Glove Society, probably like some of their hitters, the people who do a lot of like the guy this episode he's probably another hitter type of situation of like, right, he handles a more physical labor, and there's the rich and powerful people behind the scenes that haven't been revealed yet. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see where all this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. More reveals about this Black Glove Society, what Jada has in mind, and why she's doing what she's doing against her son. We'll have to wait and see. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.